More than 30 lawmakers are demanding an investigation into what they call suspicious activity on Capitol Hill one day before the attack. In a letter to security leaders, they say this. They, quote, witnessed an extremely high number of outside groups in the complex on Tuesday, January 5th. And the visitors, quote, appeared to be associated with a rally at the White House the following day. The acting House and Senate Sergeant-at-Arms and the Capitol Police did not return a request for comment from us. Virginia Democratic Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger signed that letter and joins us now to discuss. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us. You know, it was so disturbing and upsetting to see police officers taking selfies. At one point, they seemed to be opening barricades and doors to say, right this way, fellas. So it was just really tough to watch those visuals. Now, you've signed the letter. What concerns you most? What did you see, if anything?
Well, I want to start with one of the most heart-wrenching things that I saw, which is while there are disturbing photos of some of Capitol police officers taking selfies and opening doorways, I was trapped in the gallery as these insurrectionists were trying to break through, and I saw Capitol police officers barricading the door with tables and benches, desperately trying to keep them out, desperately trying to protect the lives of those inside, myself included, and I'm forever grateful. And in the lead up to January 6th, what I witnessed was members of the public, people who had no business being in the Capitol during the shutdowns that we have because of the pandemic, milling about in the office buildings. And so just notably since March, because of COVID-19, the building has been closed to the public. So it is easy to note when there is a real departure from that. And on the day before the insurrectionist attack, there were people in the building where I work. I noticed them when I was coming back from the Capitol, just people milling about in the halls, dressed in apparel that they were presumably in town for the event that they ultimately attended. And so it was notable and certainly concerning, you know, initially from a pandemic perspective, but ultimately because of the insurrectionist attack. Yeah, I mean, it's terrifying. The more we see, the more we hear. I'm sorry that you had to go through that. Your Democratic colleague, Mikey Sherrill, says she believes that some of these people had help from some of your fellow colleagues, some of your fellow Congresspeople. Do you believe that's the case? Well, so that would be the only way that these individuals would have entered the building. I have been told that they entered with members of Congress. You know, notably, some of the challenges that exist is that members of Congress have a lot more liberties when it comes to walking around the Capitol, when it comes, you know, and understandably so. But even during a shutdown period because of the pandemic, it was limited to staff, but members of Congress are able to bring people in. We do have the, I guess, they give us the courtesy of whoever we deem can come in despite the closures. They allow it, or certainly don't argue back. So the way that these individuals would have entered the Capitol in the first place would have been with a member of Congress, or making that possible. Now, the letter has been signed by more than 30 Democrats, but so far no Republicans have signed the letter, to my knowledge. Have any of them expressed any of their concerns about that to you, either privately? So in the larger discussion of all that's been happening with the domestic violent extremists who waged an attack on our Capitol, you know, I don't know that they are or not thinking about it privately, but it hasn't risen up to the level of a discussion at this point that I have had with any of my Republican colleagues. We've been focused on the articles that were brought forth yesterday and their intent on how they would be voting. And what did you make of the president's comments yesterday? You know, a week ago, he was telling the crowd, fight like hell, we'll go to the Capitol. I saw interviews with people in the crowd, Congresswoman, who were going, they thought President Trump, some of them were actually leading them. Yesterday, he says mob violence goes against everything I believe, everything this movement stands for. No true supporter of mine could ever endorse political violence. What do you make of that? And do you think that his supporters believe him when he says that now? You know, those comments, I think, are arguably 2 months too late, if not 4 years too late. This is a president who, after the horrific events in Charlottesville, said there were both people on both, you know, good people on both sides. After a woman was killed in an attack, and there were literal Nazis walking through the streets chanting anti-Semitic slogans. this is time and time again when he's had the chance to denounce violence, when he's had the chance to dial back his rhetoric, he hasn't done so. And it's created a space for these domestic violent extremist groups to really take hold. Yep. And it's created a space for conspiracy theories to begin to really take root in our society. And so much of what he's done with this notion of stopping the steal, and frankly, so many of my colleagues who didn't stand up against that and say, this is the truth. The truth is Vice President Biden is now President-elect Biden.
Yeah, I think everybody's gotten that message now, Congresswoman. Do you feel safe on Capitol Hill right now?
You know, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the security forces that are there. I'm grateful to all of the members of the National Guard who've been deployed, including many Virginians. But I think it's an evolving process, and we're going to see into the future what changes permanently may need to be made. And certainly, this is a long-term challenge. Addressing domestic violent extremism in our country is something that we're going to need to take seriously. And anyone who didn't get the message, my goodness, on January 6th, I implore you to recognize this is a long-term threat that we all need to be united in fighting against.
All right, Congresswoman Spanberger, 5 people lost their lives, but it could have been so much worse. Thank you so much for your time this morning.